So, last week, Graham did this wonderfully encouraging thing for Jason. It was his first time preaching, and I think you'll all agree with me, he did phenomenally well. But I think it had to do with the fact that beforehand, Graham used a set of slides that were there to encourage him. So I went to Graham and I said to Graham, "Hey Graham, you know what? I like this idea, so we're going to use it more often." And he looked at me and he went, "No." So I said, "Fine, I'll make my own." So I decided to put a few slides together, which we're going to use during my preach. And I'm not going to do as Graham did and make you repeat after me, because I deem you, unlike Graham, as rather intelligent individuals, and you'll be able to pick up on what I'm trying to say when you see the slides. So the first slide I designed, are they gone again? Oh. So the first slide I designed was one that says, "Wow. Wow." This is the point where you go, "Got you." Are they all gone now? They were on. So at any point in the service, please feel free to interject, stand, clap, scream it out, but you're allowed to use the words "wow." Other than that, I have also included, and we won't bother about. This is like a clown show. So Graham's not going to put me back up here again. So the next slide that I went was brilliant. I think that is something that you can all use. I give any point, just shout it out. Brilliant. Okay, you don't have to right now. I didn't say anything brilliant. Third one I thought was preach it, because I'm going to get tired, and I figured go for it. You shout out, preach it. And then I figured that, thank you, Ray, Tim. Then I figured the last one is keep going. Because as we are tired and exhausted, we're going to use keep going. So at any point, feel free just to shout it out. It's an encouragement. Debbie will take this full on. I have no fear. But I felt like it was a way to just encourage all of us this morning. Because the topic I'm speaking about is an extension of what we're doing for the next 2 weeks, a series called Make Room, our Christmas series. And this series is based on a scripture in Luke 2 verse 7, where it says, "And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn." There was no room for Jesus. And as we get to the end of our year, for many of us, there's no room. There's no room for anything. There's no room for Jesus. There's no room for activities. There's no room for work. There's no room for anything, because we seem to be filled up. Just as a matter of a survey, if you raise your hands, who tends to fill their car when their car reaches 3/4? Raise your hands. 3/4, come on. When it's 3/4, you fill your tank, right? I mean, that's logical. Okay, who fills their tank when it gets to half? Half. Anybody? Okay, there has to be somebody, otherwise my next joke doesn't work. The point is, half. No. Who fills their tank when it gets to 3/4 empty? Okay, I was really hoping I was going to get a little bit more responses than this. 3/4. Next week we'll be preaching on being honest, okay? How many of us fill our tanks when the light has come on, gone off, and the wheels are starting to already shake? Me, true. And as a matter of fact, how many of you run out of fuel? Don't show me. Okay? This is human nature. We tend to leave things till the last minute. We fill up, and not just because it's expensive, but we fill up because we wait. We're eternally optimistic. There's always going to be enough fuel. There's always going to be just that much petrol to get us to the petrol station. And if some of you are on some sort of a reward system, and putting in fuel now takes quite a bit of time, you have to swipe your Smart Shopper, your Discovery, your clicks, and then you get eventually to your card, and that one gets declined. So the point is, we wait until the end. And this is our nature. And we do this as well in the year. We give, hit June, July, and we start going, "Oh, guy." But we keep on pushing, and Then we get to November, we leopard crawl through it. And then in December, we take those 2 to 3 weeks leave where we refill ourselves all just to get ready for January again so we can give. You see, we work on this calendar. January strong, December nothing. God doesn't work on a calendar like this. God works on a calendar that goes something like this. The beginning of time, the end of time. And okay, stop it. So we go through this whole system where at the end of time, he still expects 100%. It's still going 100%. It's not just when we have the energy. And so we go through this thing where we use this cyclical rhythms that are actually not godly. We put them in place. And we put the system in that says we give our all in January, we're still pushing by June, July, and by the end of the year, good luck, you get what you get and you don't get upset. As eldership, on Tuesday we met and we prayed for you. We prayed deeply for you. And we felt that there is such an excitement coming. There is a reality that the next season that God is taking us into is one that is going to be brilliant. We are excited because we can see salvations at our door. We can see the Spirit move. We can see things happening. We can see people breaking out of their slumber. We can see all of these things. And yet we look at our people, except for those who were at the 3P this week, and Ray says they were very excitable. We see people who are tired, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually tired. And we get to the end and we're only but surviving. We're just making it. So a couple of years ago, Carla, the family, and I went on this massive adventure. We decided to buy a caravan. Never had one before. We were going to tow it from PE to Drakensberg, Bloemfontein, Drakensberg to Natal Coast back to PE. A 4-day road trip. We had a little VW Caddy, 1.4 liter, phenomenal car. I'd sell them any day. And everybody else on the trip had Land Rovers, had Land Rovers, they had Caravelle, they had RAV4, they had Fortuners, and then this little guy at the back with his silver 1.4 VW Caddy, pulling a caravan. And it was an old caravan, I'd say the late 80s, possibly early 70s. Somewhere between there. And we decided we were going to do this trip. And everybody said to me, you're going to need a lot of fuel. And I was like, I'd never been. I think the furthest we had towed that van was Willows. And so, what did I know about how much fuel we were going to need? We get on the road and every car, Landy, Fortuna, Caravelle, RAV4, is stopping at every stop. Literally you hit Sunday's River and we fill up. Okay? And the caddy didn't need it. And we were cruising and we were going, and this little caddy just never ran out of fuel. And I was proud. I was a little bit arrogant, but I was proud. And I'd rip off the Landy drivers and I'd be like, well, we're stopping again. And they'd be like, yes. And at the end of the trip, I think we spent about 1,500 rands worth of fuel. They spent about 25,000 rand fuel. But there was one gap, somewhere around Ventersburg, Stainsburg, Hofmeyr, where I don't actually know where it was, where I got a bit, said arrogant. And I was like, I don't need to fill up. And they were like, no, you must fill up. No. This caddy can go the whole way. So anyway, we get into the car, and just as we're leaving the town, the lights come on. My prayer life increased. Ons het geknyp. If you're part of the 44 who speak Afrikaans, you'll understand. We took the next part of that journey, just praying that we would make it. As a matter of fact, I remember us coming down a hill in neutral, which you should not do with the caravan. In neutral, really holding thumbs that we were going to make it. Get to the petrol station, just make it. They're all like, we need to fill up. I'm going, yeah, okay, I'll put some fuel in this time. There was no way I could make that trip and not and run out of fuel, because I would have been ripped off by the Land Rover drivers like nothing. We all know, why do you have heated windows in a Land Rover? To keep your hands warm while you're pushing. I'll get to the spiritual stuff now. So the point is, we tend to get into this pattern where we think to ourselves, we've got this down. I don't need it. Don't need to refill. I've got enough fuel. I don't check the gauges. And even when I do, I can do this thing. And the reality is we get to these points in our life where we're just crawling in. That's not how God has designed it. That's not how we hit 2023. We need to make room in our lives for God to come and refuel and for Him to come and bring us rest. And so this morning, I'd love to, and I'm taking quite a bit to get there, but I'd love to share on just 10 reasons why we lose fuel and 10 reasons how we can refuel. And I don't want to get into theological debates around Sabbath and rest. We'll let Richard do that in a 49-part series. But the point is we want to speak about daily rhythms on how we break our habits of waiting till the end and then trying to refill. We have a legitimate season right now where we can do that. We have a legitimate time where we can rest physically. And so in this season, I want to encourage us to start to break these patterns. So Rick Warren, in his preach on margins, he says there's 10 reasons why we run out of fuel. And I'm sure some of these are going to be very applicable to each one of us. But the first one is this. We tend to start in deficit. We tend to start, we can take the slide down, otherwise it was supposed to come up one at a time. We tend to start with not enough in our tanks. We get up in the morning and we're already on the back foot. And we tend to do this in life because we've gotten into a pattern of giving our all and never filling up. Giving it everything, but never actually filling up. We go through daily not filling up. We don't make the time. The second reason why we end up running out of fuel is we're too busy to refuel. We don't have the time. How many of you leave in the morning? Carla's not allowed to answer this. And as you're walking out the door, you shout at your spouse and say, by the way, the fuel light came on, and you run. Because you know they're the one who has to now go fill the car as they got to first drop off the kids, run errands, and do everything. The reality is we're too busy. We don't have the time to fill up. And this is part of our habit. We do this often. I just want to put a little asterisk in here. This preach started off with, I think the church needs to hear this. And it ended off with me sitting down going, I'm sorry, Lord. Because this is something I do often, and I'm prepared to admit to it. And I'm saying, let's break these patterns. Let's not start off with a deficit. Let's not be too busy. We're unaware of leaks in our tank. Many of us have little foxes that break into our tank, that cause little leaks in our tanks. These little foxes are small things that draw our energy, and we don't even know they're drawing our energy. There may be leaks in your tank because there's relationships in your life that is draining your tank, and they're unhealthy for you. There may be duties in your life, and I'm not talking about life duties. There may be things in your life that are draining you, and they're stealing your fuel. And that's fine if you are refueling. But you need to be aware of these little leaks that cause you to run out of fuel. Some of us don't consider the owner's manual. The owner's manual for us is the Bible. The Bible has very specific lines, and it tells us what we can and can't do. And so all of a sudden you buy a 1.4 liter caddy and you're towing a 2-ton caravan behind you. Trust me, it's not the right thing to do. If you read the owner's manual, you would notice that is not the correct thing to be doing. And so we don't look at the owner's manual. We don't look at what it says. One of the top 10 things God puts in that manual is He says Sabbath, and yet we don't look at it because we can keep going. We can push through. We're strong enough. We can do it. We don't look at that owner's manual. Don't give up. That wasn't on my slides, Richard. We're too distracted and do not watch the gauges. We're not looking at the gauges in our life. Those gauges include things like our sleep, our diet, our relationships. Those are the gauges we should be looking at. When those things are taking strain, we should be stopping and saying, hey, something's gone here. I've lost something. We carry too much weight. Rick Warren tells the story of a guy in a truck, and behind him was this driver, and every now and again the truck would stop. The guy would get out, and he'd be smacking the side of the truck. So eventually the guy stops and says to him, "So tell me, why are you smacking the side of the truck?" And he says, "Easy. This is a 2-ton truck. I have 4 tons of canaries. If I keep on smacking it and keep half of them in the air, I'll be fine." And that's how we do life. We carry too much stuff. We carry baggage that we shouldn't be carrying. And then we try and push through. We try and put that 1.2-ton caravan on the back of a little VW Up. I'm a VW fan, and I'm sure the Up can pull a caravan, but I'm not going to do it. We carry too much weight. We don't look at that ratio. And so we use all of our fuel because all we're trying to do is make it. All we're trying to do is get there. And we're just expelling everything we've got. We live under the pressure to do it now. Who does this one? It's got to be done now. When you accelerate too quickly, you use fuel. And when we do everything now, we use up our energy. I'm on Discovery. I'll drive one too. But the point is, it's this image of we have these big cars that guzzle all our fuel. And we carry things, we live not how we should be living. And the last one he says is we have no spare time. We have no room to actually refuel our cars. We have no space for it. We don't make the time. And so he says that these 10 reasons are why we lose fuel, why we lose energy. And so what I'd love for us to do is that I'm going to look at 10 reasons how we recoup this fuel, how we refuel. But the beautiful thing is that God is the one who does it. It's not on us. And so there's 2 scriptures I'd love to look at. The first one is Matthew 11, verse 28, and you all know it. It says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavily burdened by religious rituals that provide no peace, and I will give you rest, refreshing your souls with salvation. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Follow me as my disciple, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will rest, renewal, blessed, quiet for your soul. For my yoke is easy to bear, my burden is light." The Message puts it this way. It says, "Are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." In Hebrews 4, verse 10 and 11, it says, "For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will perish by following the example of disobedience." This morning, I'm not looking at rest from the principle of the Sabbath. I'm not looking at rest from the fact that salvation is our rest. I'm not looking at rest from the point that Jesus is the ultimate Sabbath. I'm looking at this daily rhythm of how we do it, how we every single day refuel, and how we every single day rest. And rest in itself does not mean not doing anything. As a matter of fact, and you're going to have to slow down for this one, rest is doing something, not doing something. Although not doing something may be part of the doing something. Let me say that again. Rest is doing something. It's not doing something. Although not doing something may be part of the doing something. Okay. It took me a whole night to come up with that one. No, I'm joking. I'm not slamming going to the beach and resting, sitting on the beach. I'm not slamming the fact that you're going to cycle yourself into oblivion. I'm not slamming the fact that you're going to be baking or you're going to be gardening. Because that in itself may be rest for some. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is doing something that brings you rest and refueling. And we do that when we do it with Jesus. And so the whole principle is we have these 4 buckets that need to be filled. It's our energy. One is physical, one is emotional, one is spiritual, one is mental. And the reality of these buckets is that as you give out, you need to pour into them. And if you don't pour into them more than what you give out, your buckets get empty. And so you cannot assume that just by sitting and laying on a couch, those 4 buckets are simply going to be filled. It may be an element of it, but that's not how you fill those 4 buckets. And if we want to make sure that we're consistently, not just January and February, full of energy, we need to daily make sure that those buckets are being filled. And we do that through a number of things. And so that is what I'd love for us just to look at. Steve Wimble preaches on this, and you're welcome to go find his preach. And he points out that it's rather important. Because the reality is we know that God did this, Genesis 2. We know that Jesus even did this. He rested in, I think it's John 4. We know that we are designed by God to need refueling. We know that resting puts God in control. But we also know that if we don't rest, we get like Bruce, grumpy. No, sorry, that wasn't it. If we don't rest, we become easily overwhelmed. We lose our grace. We become defensive. We struggle with a lack of joy. We struggle with our relationships. Our call struggles. We make poor decisions. And we have no space for God to move us and challenge us. And we have no room. And so the tools that I'd love for us to take away from here are 10 ways that we can refuel. Now, I worked really hard to try and make this all work, and we don't need to put the slide up, please. They all begin with the letter R. Rest, refuel, and then we go through it. So watch this. So, number 1, we're going to rest daily. I worked long on that one. Rest daily. The reality is, one way that we need to rest is 3 critical things that we need to do. And when Carla and I do counsel anybody and we sit with them, we actually ask this question first. Under rest, number 1, are you sleeping enough? Are you eating correctly? And are you exercising? It's the first block you've got to get off. If you're not sleeping correctly, if you're not eating correctly, and you're not exercising, you're already starting on a deficit. And so I want to encourage us in this season that we need to make sure that our sleep patterns are good, that our diet is good, and that our exercise is great. Now, I'm not asking you all to this week sleep 12 hours a day, make sure that you have a diet that consists of these certain things. I'm not telling you what your diet's supposed to be, and I'm also not telling you how much exercise you need to be doing. You need to be looking at that for yourself. You need to be putting a plan together. How you rest daily is by sleeping well, eating well, and exercising. That's a basic. That's just like we're starting. The next thing we need to do, number 2, is we need to refuel daily. Refuel daily means this. It means every single day getting down into something that gives you energy, and that energy is the word. You need to grab hold of that word, because by consuming the word, you're refueling your spirit. The word speaks to places that we can't speak. The word gives you truth. It sets promise. It sets vision in your life. And so you need to break open the word. I want to honor my wife here. Every morning before 4, she will wake up and she'll go over the word. And then she'll want to share it with me. I can't see anything before like 8:39. And she'll break into that word every single day. I want to encourage us in this season, when you're on your holiday, when you're in the space, there's this tendency to go, I read my Bible every day during the year. These are my 2 weeks. I'm going to take a gap. No. Read the scriptures every single day. And the reality is, are you going to be perfect at it? And you're going to get 100%, and you're going to get that tick that says, I've done it 365 days. No. And I don't want to beat you up for that. But go back. Push. Refuel. Get into the word. Third one is rediscover rhythms. 2 R's. Yeah, I want us to speak about the fact that we have these patterns that we need to fall into. Some may call it disciplines. But the reality is we need to pick up patterns in our lives. If Richard was doing this preach, which he wasn't allowed to, because he believes you rest when you die, the rhythm that we may pick up is on Monday. On Monday, we have to do things like getting up an hour earlier. Tuesday, taking an ice cold bath. I didn't get to Wednesday because I was like, I'm already out. But the point is, you need to develop rhythms, things that you're doing in your life that is putting you back in a place of energy. You need to find those rhythms. For me, in the morning, it is very simple. It's coffee, oats. No, a little bit differently. Coffee, oats, worship, and scripture. Those things, that's my rhythm. I get into that, and I seem to just move well. How many of you have rhythms? Don't show me, but how many of you have rhythms that you can enter easily into? We need to set that up in our lives. We need to remove busyness from our lives. Simplify. Being busy is being frantic. Being productive is being focused. Being busy is fueled by perfectionism. Being productive is fueled by purpose. Being busy is about working hard. Being productive is about being smart. Remove the busyness and be productive. Many of us are just busy, but we actually have nothing to show at the end. Remove those things that are taking up your time, stealing your time, but have no benefit for you. Release control to God. This is a big one. When we release control to God, when we give to Him what we're carrying that's too heavy, it becomes easier for us to walk. We're refueled because we're giving it away. He gives us, as in Matthew 28, He gives us His yoke, which is easy. And so the principle here is give away those things that are weighing you down, because that reduces and strips out your energy. It's easier said. It's easier said than done. And for me, this was a massive one. How do I give God those things that are really hurt? And it's easy. You say, Jesus, take the wheel. And then you hold onto it really tightly. This is releasing to God and saying, okay, take the wheel, and I'm stepping back. I'm moving to the back seat. It requires doing something. It's not just going to happen because you've said it. So remember in the beginning I said, resting is doing something. Doing something is giving up control. Regulate your atmosphere. We talk about this a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But we have lots of things being poured into us. Social media. We see everybody's lives. We see what's happening. And we tend to look at that and go, I want that. And that takes our energy. And so when you start releasing that, making sure that the things that you're taking into yourself are not everybody else's, but that what God wants for you, you tend to refuel. You're not worrying about what everybody else is doing. Recognize weapons of mass distraction. I'm guilty of this one. Recognize weapons of mass distraction. So I sit down, I watch a YouTube clip on how to fix a specific issue on my computer, and 2 hours later, I'm watching a tutorial on how to communicate with giraffes. Or, why? Who needs a reason? Everyone wants to communicate with giraffes. I've done that. So, it's bad when you're laughing at your own jokes. we need to regulate our distractions. We need to be aware of them. Reels, WhatsApp statuses, I've just found it, and I'm like, whoa, this could keep me going forever. The reality is it robs our time to refuel. I have stopped myself with my coffee and my oats and my worship going, I have to leave now because I've got to get to work. We need to remove those distractions. And so one way I've done that now is I don't use my phone to listen to worship because I get distracted too easy. Oh, look, butterflies. Remain. I just want to add this. I've highlighted it and put a star there. It says, some people have the ability to do this. They can check their WhatsApp statuses. They can go into Reels. They can go into YouTube, watch a video, and walk away. And I'm not putting a heavy on you.